Welcome. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Bill Diamond. I'm one of the two authors of Fire Your Excuses, and some of you have probably read them. Some of you are friends, and it's good to say hello to you as well. And I'm going to talk about what we're going to learn today, and we're going to learn about how to make 2015 extraordinary. We're also going to look at the blind spots and weaknesses, and that's a challenge. If you don't know what they are, you can find yourself in a real tough spot. Because many people just get to a point in their career where they get stalled out and they wonder what's going on. Maybe you are in a situation where you're in transition, or you've just always kind of sensed that you haven't done as well as you'd like to. You're not where you want to be. I think that's a pretty common feeling that a lot of people have. We're also going to talk a little bit about a couple ideas related to the chapters of Fire Excuses. We're going to focus on time management. We're going to focus on walking the last mile of denial. It's a concept I think you'll really like. And we're going to talk a lot about the idea of not trying harder, but getting more connected. So I want to start with a question. What happened to us as a country? I would argue that we become a nation that's fond of making excuses. I don't know about you, but I can tell within just 30 seconds or so if a person I'm talking to is someone that is using excuses. It is very, very obvious to me, and probably to you as well. We all have a story, and some of us are so used to telling our story, it almost fools us. We give an edited version. We talk about things that are the reason why things are the way we are, and we begin to believe them. And that becomes a real issue because we become tied up in a prison of our own making. So let's look at what's happened to America. Well, the first thing we know, and we won't spend too much time on this, but just to review that, we are the most obese industrial nation on the earth. We have every state in the union has at least 20% obesity rate, and a dozen or more states have 30% obesity rate. And this was not true in the case at all, even in 1990. Only 10 states had that. So we have really grown more obese, and we've heard a lot about that in the news. We're also a culture, and this is human nature as well, that tends to think we're better than we are. Do you know that 93% of American drivers believe they're above average? And I can tell you that I was that guy that didn't want to go around the block when I missed my exit the other day and maybe turned off real quick in front of you, and you're not so thrilled with my driving. You did that to me the other day. Maybe you didn't use a blinker, but we all kind of think we're fine. We're just doing what we need to do. We're just late. We just have to go here or there. And yet we tend to think the other person, it is absolutely how they drive. It's not an exception. We give ourselves that sense that it was an exception to the rule of being a great driver. We think that person just doesn't know how to drive. Also interesting, individuals with a lower IQ are more likely to rate themselves as a higher IQ than those around them. So be careful when you think that, hey, everybody else is just challenged and I'm somebody who's sharp. Be careful about that, because that may be an indication that you're over exaggerating your IQ. Now, what do we call this? We call this illusory superiority. And what is that? It's a mental bias that causes people to overestimate their positive qualities and abilities and underestimate their negative qualities. So we tend to kind of give ourselves a break and see that as an exception, but we see other people as having enduring personality issues that mean they're not quite as good as we are. So that's illusory superiority. If you want to use a big word with your friends, go ahead and throw that out. Now, we get asked a lot, what's the difference between a challenge and excuse? Well, having a weakness isn't the same thing as an excuse. Not doing anything is. So, for example, some of you may have had some struggles with diabetes or other issues that have come into your life. Some of them may be related to such things as type 1 diabetes, which tends to be more genetic. Type 2, there's a genetic component, but there's more of a lifestyle component too. But however you may be with your insulin levels, there's lots of things that are partially our responsibility, partially genetics, and we could argue they're all our responsibility, that having a genetic issue does not give us the option of just saying we can't do anything. Another example might be a lot of us will believe that some of us are predisposed to being alcoholic. If we drink, we're more likely to cross that threshold where we can't let it go. Does that mean you can just say, doesn't matter, I've got genetics, I'm an alcoholic, party on? No, we know we're responsible. So I hope when you hear this idea of firing your excuses, you kind of are able to see this on the continuum. On one hand, everything is our responsibility, at least to do the best we can. On the other hand, there are some things that are genetic cards that we're dealt, what we can still use excuses in this area. So I hope you don't see Marcus, my co-author, and I seeing everything is just an excuse. It isn't. But I can argue this, that we use more excuses than we need to, and we tend to not look at the things we can control. And we'll talk more about that later. I also want to say that the fire excuse idea, and this is kind of born out of our 4.5 years of writing, our 30 years of peace, working with clients. I've been working with clients since 1983. Kind of feel bad for those first few clients. But we want to say that the fire excuse approach is not a quick fix. It isn't just a magical cure. Change can be something that people do rapidly, but permanent change is very, very elusive. And that's what we wrote a lot about, is not just whether you can lose those 10 pounds, but whether you can keep it off for life. So it's not a quick fix. What are the areas of fire excuses? Well, there's 8 areas. We're going to look at a few of them today. Blind spots and weaknesses is kind of the start of it all. If you're not aware of what they are, then the rest of it is hard to ever even access. Then there are things related to our health and wellness. We could talk a lot on that, and we may do a broadcast just on health and wellness. Social connections, how isolated we are. Our communication ability. Most of us think we're better than we are. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Time management, how we organize our time. And I'll ask you one question that will show you that a lot of us don't do one thing that has a profound impact on our time management. And then finances. We could have another whole presentation just on that. We won't talk so much about that today, but we know that's an area of denial for many people. Our career, we are going to talk a lot about that today because I think that's probably on everybody's mind as we start the beginning of the year. And then, of course, serving. We believe that serving is kind of the capstone of working with living beyond an excuse-filled life. That if we're just trying to get better for ourselves, we become a very small king of a small fiefdom. We just don't want that. We want to look beyond that. And I think we're all on the same page to some degree or another, that giving to others, serving others is really the very stuff of life. And I don't know about you, but I have been happiest when I've been giving. And when I look at moving my life in the future, I want to give more, not less. It's not Miller time. It's not just kind of retiring and getting away from it all. It's really having a life where I can have more of an impact. And I think for a lot of people, that's really the thing that drives them to fire excuses, is they want to do more in life. They want to have more of an impact, not only financially, but with their family and with the world. So when we look at blind spots, it is a challenge. And there's an old saying that the fish doesn't know the water's wet. It's hard for us to know really the depth of our own self-deception. Even the good book says the heart is desperately wicked. Who can know it? We're deceitful. We tend to give ourselves a break. Like we said, joking around, illusory superiority. And it looks like some others have joined us. Thanks a lot for coming on board. If you want to chat with me, you can just say hello on the right-hand side, ask a question, just do that. But I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what you can do when it comes to getting that feedback. You know, people that are CEOs are not immune, or they don't get a hall pass when it comes to having people look in on their work. C-level leaders have sometimes even more people looking in on their work because they have a board of directors and they have some outside investors and things like that. So we never get to the point where we don't need it. But sometimes in the middle of the pack, we're no longer a line staff or a manager. We have some people looking in on us. We may or may not seek that out in other areas. We may have it at work, but not in personal life. So you got to have some close friends apart from your boss that says, here are some weaknesses. Here's what you can do to address them. And I want you to work with me. Maybe you could say that to them. I know it's hard for you to give me this feedback. You could say that to them, and you really value it and you want to make a change. And I can tell you that there have been profound moments in my life where getting that kind of feedback was transformational. We'll see in a second that we don't just need experience. The school of hard knocks gives experience. We need guided experience. And some of you, I want to talk to some of you with your career, is you haven't had that type of focused feedback in decades. You may have had some feedback about certain things at work you could do better, but the big picture of where you're headed, the trajectory of what you're going to do next, you may not have had that. I don't know if you have been like me, but I've had many times where I've sought out people to help me in these critical junctures of life. Sometimes it's an ongoing experience, but I've had times even in my youth where a single conversation transformed the direction of my life, and I never saw that person again. So the power of inviting people to speak into your life, to point out areas that other people may be afraid to do so, can be transformational. The second question might be just little things like quirks and personality habits. When I see videos of myself, sometimes I do some things on platform where I say, you know what, wow, I didn't even realize I was making that facial expression or that repetitive hand motion. That kind of feedback is huge. So the question is, do you have 2 or 3 people in your life that you've invited to give you that kind of feedback? If you don't, that's your first order of business in 2015. You've got to get that to happen. And I'll explain some ways that I do it. I want to give you the first key idea for fire excuses, and it's not our own. It's one that we borrowed from one of our heroes, and his name is Coach John Wooden, and he was one of the winningest basketball coaches in history. He died just a few years ago at the age of 99. He became a leadership speaker as well. He coached Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You probably heard of him. And here's what he says. It's a challenge for us, and it has really had an impact in my life. It's this: don't let what you cannot do keep you from doing what you can. Don't let what you cannot do keep you from doing what you can. Now, how does that transform your life? Well, I'll tell you this. If I get up every morning and I flip that around and say, you know what? I'm not able to do this yet. I'm waiting to get paid on this. I don't have this resource. I'm not sure I have time for this, but what can I still do? And this is something that I like to do every morning. What can I still do? It just changes the whole course of my day. I can give people a lot of things I can't do because of all those aforementioned things. But if I get up every day and say, what can I still do? Well, I'm waiting on this. I don't have 2 hours, but I could set that up. I could research that. I could outline that article. I could create this product. I could call that person. I could meet here. I could pay this. I could do this. Then you become a person increasingly that lives an excuse-free life. So I want you to think about that phrase, that first phrase, don't let what you can't do keep you from doing what you can. And then what can you still do? Let me give you an example. I have bad knees. I've had 4 knee dislocations. I have a congenital issue with the shape of my femur and my patella, my kneecap, and it's easy for my knees to dislocate. And I've had surgery. I've had braces on my knees at times, long recovery. And remember, I had a particularly bad dislocation a number of years ago, and I was somebody who loved to ski. I loved to go up to and ski that beautiful area. Went with my friends. I just felt like maybe my skiing days were over. Well, I was watching the NBA game, and I saw an incredible player with a much more sophisticated and extensive brace on his knee than I had on mine. I was only using it when I did extreme sports. This person was using it every single game. And I said to myself, if this guy can play pro basketball, I can go skiing again. So I went actually to the local sporting goods store because I sensed correctly that the brace that my orthopedic surgeon had given me for hundreds of dollars, thank you insurance, was not as good as the braces that they were selling now 5 years later in the sporting goods store. So I bought one for the other knee. I now had 2. I was the bionic man. And I realized for several years I had used as an excuse. Get back up to the ski area. I had the support that I needed. I skied very soon like I had never had any trouble. And I realized that that excuse had kept me from the slopes for years. So I used to be the guy that if I had a knee issue, I wouldn't do anything. Now I say, if I've got a knee issue, what can I do upper body? If I have a shoulder issue, what can I do lower body? I've become a person that has shrunk their exercise excuses. Maybe in exercise, you have no excuses. You do that routinely, but there may be an area of your life where you are letting what you can't do keep you from doing what you can. I want you to meet Paul. Paul is talented. He's loyal. He's intelligent. He's been with the company about 5 years. Everybody likes him. He's eager to advance, but he never will. Why? Because he's got some hidden areas that he doesn't even realize he has. If that's you, you need to widen the circle. You need to get some feedback. If you sense you're stuck, you're being passed over, you're being commoditized, you come to the right place. So before we get to just career and what you can do there, I want to talk a little bit about just how do you manage your time so you can be purposeful and directive and focused with that. Well, Marcus and I have had a chance to study the top 5%. We've got to know some of these writers. We've had some really incredible people in our coaching program and our practices, and we've taken notes. But a lot of it has been begun by reading, connecting in podcasts, getting to know some of these people, and now actually being on their show. So let me tell you about how the top 5% manage their time. Now, before I do, I want to remind you that some of the latest research talks about vital behavior. And vital behaviors are the short list of actionables that you need to do to change anything. For example, if I want to lose weight, even though it may seem emotionally difficult, and it may be, the number of actual behaviors to achieve my goal is actually a very short list. I need to know how many calories I eat. I need to burn less than those number of calories that I need every day to maintain. And I need to keep track of this. I maybe need to do some exercise that would help me lower the calories. If I exercise and I burn 400 calories on the elliptical, that's 400 calories more I can eat and not have a net gain or loss in that particular area. So by knowing this short number of things, the calorie intake, how much I'm getting, what I'm doing, and adding some exercise, that for most people will give you 80% success in your goals. It's not very difficult. It's not rocket science. The challenge is emotional. So when we look at time management, we have to recognize that there's only a few vital behaviors, just like almost every area, only 2 or 3 major areas that we need. But we also have to recognize that the real battle may be emotional. And that's what Marcus and I talk a lot about, is if you look at time management without emotional management, you're going to miss the big picture. You're going to say, I had those 3 hours. I was ready to go. I didn't use them for what I needed to use them. What is wrong with me? So how do the top 5% manage their time? Well, I can tell you a multimillionaire I know, and he has just a 3-ring binder that's 3 by 4 inches. He may have got it at one of the office stores. He's not high tech at all. He has people for that, but he is incredibly disciplined with the use of his very low tech system. We like to say any system beats no system. We could talk about Stephen Covey. We could talk about Franklin Planner. We could talk about David Allen's system. Any other system, you know what? Any system beats no system. Your mileage may vary. So whether you're high tech or low tech, you got to have a system. But I'll give you something that does work. And that is, I want you to think and ask yourself honestly, do you have a weekly personal business meeting? I speak corporately all the time, about 150 times a year. And I probably ask this question at least 20 times a year. I ask people and audiences, do you have a weekly personal business meeting? And I can tell you that about 10% of any audience is all that answers in the affirmative for that question. Most people do not sit down and plan out their week. And that's what we mean by a personal business meeting. Do you sit down and plan out what you're going to do for the rest of the week? I want you to remember this. If you don't plan your week, I guarantee you other people will plan it for you. It's not that you plan it or nothing happens. If you don't plan it, something will happen. It just won't be what you want. It won't be your priorities. So hosting a weekly personal business meeting, high tech, low tech, using computers, using a journal, using a little notebook, is absolutely huge for a minimum of a half hour every week. If you do this, you will not miss the forest for the trees. If you schedule your day every day, that's good. And that's the idea of not letting what you can't do keep you from doing what you can. What can you still do each day? That's a good start. But you've got to have at least a weekly meeting to get the big picture. It's so easy for that not to happen. What if you're a person who's constantly interrupted? And a lot of us may feel that way. Let me just say this. Even if your list is jettisoned and say half the list is gone because of interruptions, you're still going to get more done than if you just started your day and hope for the best. So being interrupted is not a reason to not have a list. You've got to have something. Same thing with finances. If your income is variable, it's better to have a budget, even if at times your budget is out the window. Saying that I don't know when this is coming in, that's coming in. It's hard to predict what's coming in per month. Take the lowest month, make a budget, maybe conservative, and you'll do much better. So the first thing that top performers do, the top 5% with their time, is have a weekly personal business meeting. The second thing they do is they find their quote unquote golden hours. Now, some of you, their golden hours, the hours you do the best, are between 3 and 3:15. So if you're working for somebody else, man, that is tough. If you just take all day to ramp up, you've got a power 15 minutes and you wind down and it's coffee break time, you probably come to the wrong place. But if you know that sometimes you're a morning person, sometimes you're an afternoon person, sometimes you're a night owl, you may know where your golden hours are. I do think you can make a pretty strong case that your mind is clear, you're less exhausted, and you may be less interrupted earlier in the day. If you're trying to exercise more frequently, having that happen in the evening can sometimes be a more dangerous setup than having it first thing in the morning. The golden hours are traditionally from 5 to 8 a.m. And if you want to read about that getting up early, there's a guy by the name of Ron Sharma, and he wrote the book, How to Get Up Early. It's actually a video, on YouTube, How to Get Up Early. He's got about 15 minutes on how to do it and why to do it. And I have been following that off and on now for the last year, and it has been a tremendous boost to my productivity. Now, if you're a person who's a late night person, that's great. That might be your golden hours, but you might also be a person that has things not happen because you're interrupted. So consider where they may be and carve them out. Be willing to live a little countercultural, and that may be a great way to go. I always joke, the book that we're talking about here, Fire Excuses, wasn't something that Marcus and I wrote up in a cabin for 3 weeks in the mountains and came down and had a great old time and now we get it published. No, it was something that took 4.5 years. That cabin experience is your third book. Your first book is 15 minutes here and there trying to find those golden hours because life is just too busy. There'll be never a time where you have those 3 months until you're retired and you may not feel like writing them. So they have a system, they have a golden hour. They recognize that time management begins with emotional management. If you can honestly say, I've had time blocked out and I didn't do it, and it happens to me a lot, well, guess what? It's time to go more emotional, talk to somebody, find out what's going on. Don't just have a just do it attitude. I love just do it. But you know what? Just do it doesn't always work because emotions are at play. Admit it. They also have a laser focus when it comes to distractions. They know what things are essential, and that's another great book that I like. It's called Essentialism by Gary McCowan. So I'm going to give you 3 books that are great if you want to know more about this time management. And if you'd like to have a copy of the deck for this first broadcast, you can email me at drbill@fireyourexcuses, and I will send you the complete deck. So anything that you didn't catch, you can have that. I'll send it to you as a PDF or a PowerPoint. So that's available to you. But let me just give you the 3 books. The first one I like is called Getting Things Done, and that's by David Allen. It's a great resource. I had a chance to interview him on a podcast that I do from time to time. He's an excellent system, easy to read. They have a great audio book you can listen to for about 3 hours. Excellent resource on his system. The other gentleman that I really like is Jay Papasan and Gary Keller. They've written a book called The One Thing, and it's newer. It's been about a year or 2 since it's come out. I've got to know them as well down in Texas. Gary Keller, you may know from Keller Williams. Jay Papasan wrote this book called The One Thing, and their contribution is you're looking out in the distance what your 5 or 10 year goals are, and you're bringing them back to this year, this month, this week, this day. And when you bring them back to the present, some of those goals you realize are just pipe dreams. They're not going to happen. You're going to realize, like they say, a goal without a date is just a wish. I may want to write a book a year, but when I bring it all the way back to a weekly amount of work and what it would take, I realize that that probably won't happen unless I am working a lot less in my regular work. And I may not want to do that. So it helps you be realistic. Then I mentioned Essentialism, a brand new book by Gary McCowan. It's been out the last year. McKeown, Gary McCowan, Essentialism, just the disciplined pursuit of less and just how to focus in. So those are some things. Again, I'm not giving you a lot. I'm just giving you a couple or 3 things to do with each of these. Time management, have that personal business meeting, have a system, look at some of the best, work on that, and you'll be surprised how you do. Find that golden hour as well. So now I want to talk about career, and maybe that's what piqued your attention in terms of Fire Excuses. I think you know that Marcus and I and a number of our colleagues are focused a lot on online and what's available there and social media and speaking and writing. And if that's your interest and you would like to learn more and maybe have a book in you, we can help you. But let me just talk about this phenomenon of what we call being commoditized. Maybe you read years ago or saw the play Death of a Salesman. And Willie Loman is the title character. He's in his 60s and he realizes only too late that his job is being pushed out and that he's in complete denial and has a tragic end. He takes his own life. Well, many people have felt from time to time like they're being commoditized. When they realize that they're being passed over, they realize they're in their 40s, their 50s and beyond. Other people have found ways to reinvent themselves. So we're going to look at some things you can do to stay out of being commoditized. Let me tell you a story. First of all, I'm going to talk about choosing your pain and choosing your joy. I spoke recently and I talked to 2 senior level people and 2 people that were of senior age, same people. One of them was talking about what they wanted to do and how they were going to do it. And the other person just said, you know, I just retired and I am going to start a new business. And they did. The first person, I could tell, was still in complete denial. I could tell that they were not going to do anything serious about looking for work. They would probably burn through their severance package, and they would probably be in a crisis situation within a year or less. The other person, I could tell just in the 30 seconds, being at the same age, and I think in this case she was actually older, I knew that she would do it. There was not a hint of denial. She had done some things before, and the best predictor for me is past behavior. And both of these people had very, very different views, even though they're close to the same age. Are you in a bit of denial about how your industry is, about your position in it? Is the phone ringing less? Do you feel like the chances of you getting rehired if you're in transition would be less than others? One of the things that I have heard a lot about and really have resonated with is that when you develop things on your own in the 2nd or 3rd chapter of your life, you have a pretty good opportunity to make the same amount, if not more, as you made in your career. Unless you reinvent yourself very deliberately working for others, and it's possible, and we're going to talk about how to do that, the chances of you continue to rise higher and higher and higher to the very end of your career, for many people, is very remote. If you're not leading companies, if you're middle management, the chances of you getting rehired in this economy at the exact same rate as you're getting older, and we're all getting older, is limited. And so that can be the big aha. The question is, what do you do when you're in that transition? Are you willing to take less? For some, that makes sense. You've got other opportunities. You want to take some time to travel, focus with the kids, grandkids. But for those of you who want more, you've got some very hard choices to make. You've either got to reinvent yourself at your current job and become so valuable that age is not a factor. What you're getting paid is not a factor, because we know as we get older, we can be replaced for a lot less by somebody who's just out of graduate school. Or you have to be about the very deliberate task of creating your own opportunity. And this is not a get rich quick presentation. It's just kind of laying out your options. But I think if you're in your 40s, 50s, or beyond, you have to think about which one of these are you going to do. Are you going to double down and become indispensable regardless of what you're paid in your current field, in your current work? Or are you going to say, you know what? The cheese has left the building. I've got to develop an outside thing that will supplement and maybe take over my income as my commoditization happens in my current job. So what could you do? Should you want to stay, or should you want to develop on your own? Well, there is an antidote to being commoditized. I can tell you personally, I have never regretted any writing I've ever done. I wish I had written earlier in my career. I was in my mid-30s before I really started to throw my hat in the ring. I just wrote my first book years later. I wish I had done it. I may not have had the confidence. I may not have felt like I knew as much, but there's never been easier of a time to write and to get published. And I would argue that this is a day where writing a whole book is less and less necessary. The impact of writing a whole book can be great, but the amount of hours you spend, it may not make sense. What is something that might be better for your career and a whole lot easier? Writing a very short targeted ebook. And I have seen some that are 30 to 60 pages. They're very niched, and the more niched, meaning more focused on a certain topic your book is, the more you can charge for it. For example, if you're a consultant and you want to write a book about consulting, well, if you write a book about consulting, you will make $20 or $30. But if you write about how to consult step by step in the IT field with forms and introductions and other bennies, you might be able to charge $50 to $100 for a much shorter document that is very targeted. So don't worry if you don't see yourself in Barnes & Noble or in a huge Amazon marketing campaign. Think about, what do you know that you could teach in a very small niche? Now, if you want to know more about that, you can talk to me and we'll go for it. And what I'm offering today, and you can go to our website, Fire Your Excuses. There's a link on the first page. You can click it or paste it, and it will take you to a link where you can get a a coaching session, not for $150, but for $97. And that will end just after this broadcast. So you can go ahead, and if you want to meet with me in that, I'm happy to sit down with you and block out how you can create something of your own. But you have to do it through the website, fireyourexcuses.com. Click on the teleseminar link on the first page. It will take you to that offer. I'll tell you about that at the end. Okay, speaking. I think you can guess that for me personally, speaking has been a great part of my career. But not everybody's going to want to speak 100 or more times a year. But you may find that speaking for conferences, speaking for staff meetings, speaking for charities might be just the thing that begins to get you on the radar, gives you the confidence to develop a little something that you could sell or create or record. What about media? Well, do you know that there are hundreds, if not thousands of people that are writing for places like Forbes and Huffington Post and Fast Company and Entrepreneur Magazine and a host of others? If you're somebody that is who likes to read and can analyze why certain of these articles have a lot of page views, and sometimes you can actually see in the article how many people have seen it, it won't take you too long to recognize there's a pattern. And as you begin to write like them and pitch your idea of writing for maybe some other websites and blogs and eventually some of the big Fortune 500 type companies, you will find that this will open up amazing doors. I can tell you that I have been featured 6 times in the last year and a half in Forbes, and now I'm in communication with Forbes about writing for them myself. So I can tell you that it opens up doors. Start small. Just find somebody who has a little bit bigger platform than you. If you like quilting, find a little bit bigger quilting website. If you don't have one, then approach them and say, I'd like to write a guest post. So you can begin to write that way. You can repurpose what you do as far as speeches. You can sell speeches. You can record speeches. And I should tell you that today I'm recording the speech. Nobody has had a chance to speak up yet, so that's fine. But I just want to let you know that I am recording. And this is a situation where we might be able to repurpose this in some fashion. What about online groups? You can be a part of an online group, but what about starting one? What about starting your own private Facebook group or your own private LinkedIn group? What if nobody comes? You start, and guess what happens? Eventually you get some traction. What about associations and membership? I would say some associations are great. Some of them are a complete waste of time. You've got to use that essentialism in your forethought to say, what should I be a part of? There have been some that I love everybody and I enjoy going. And when I did the math, I said, this is not worth 2 hours of my life every 2 weeks. I don't think this is a lot of value to my business. I love the people here, but it's a social time and I'm paying good money to be here. I need to stop immediately, and I did. Other times I've been part of associations where I'm the only person from my industry, but it's a complementary industry. If you're, say, a builder, then you might want to be attending events where you're with somebody in real estate. You don't have to just join something where everybody's just like you, and it might not be a bad thing to join people that are very different than you. So think about associations like you. Think about associations different. Don't just show up at places where all of you are looking for the same worm and somebody who's putting it on is the one actually making the money. Be wise. Here's what Charlie Tremendous Jones said. You'll be the same person in 5 years as you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. Charlie Tremendous Jones. So the question is, who do you need to meet this year? And what books do you need to read? Jim Rohn, who just passed away a couple of years ago, said this: you are the average of your 5 closest friends. Is that kind of scary? The idea that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I have some great friends and I have close friends, but I am more and more saying the people that I am with need to be people that are growing and changing. And these are the people that I want closest to me. I will always have great friends of all different types, but the closest people I know I have to live deliberately because I will become like that. So what's one of the best ways you can do it? You can join or start even a mastermind group. 2 years ago, a colleague and I started a mastermind group. We have 6 people. We meet every Wednesday from 7 to 8:30. We talk through business issues. We challenge each other's business plans, our marketing, our life goals, our priorities. It's an incredibly loving group, but an incredibly confronted group, and we love it. Maybe you need to start a group of like-minded people. Would that begin to give you some credibility in your office if you said, we're starting a book group to be better in leadership, we're starting a group about this or that? Would it help you in your neighborhood if you said, we're going to start a group about this other type of event? Maybe it's crafting, maybe it's eBay, maybe it's Etsy. But people who start things are perceived as leaders, and eventually it really comes down to helping you in a financial way as well. It both helps your life and it helps your pocketbook. What is happening now is a second thing, and that is the growth of certificate programs. Certificate programs are non-degree programs that are just what you need. And I know people that have said, I've got my master's, I don't want to go back for another one, but I need to learn and get certified in this thing. And I know that if I spend a little bit less than my degree, maybe a lot less, I will be able to get a raise. So be thinking about the non-traditional, non-degreed certificate programs. Think about free courses, podcasts. I can tell you, I've listened to 500 hours of podcasts since 2011. 90% of that has been when I'm driving. The rest has been when I'm exercising. Virtually none of that time has been sitting listening. So this is time I would be wasting anyway. And yet I've got 500 hours of education, and it has helped me tremendously in my business. What are you listening to when you're driving? Are you turning on the radio and hoping for the best? Are you listening to audiobooks, podcasts? There are great things out there. Do you know the average person reads about 4 to 6 books a year? I like to read 20 to 25. So I like to be the guy that outreads people. And guess what? It just makes a huge difference in my career. Well, let me give you a few more things, and then we'll begin to move toward the end. I want us to look beyond media. We've talked a lot about social media and writing. I want to talk about the old-fashioned way to differentiate yourself this year. I want to talk about 5 things, 5 timeless tips for extraordinary influencers and human beings. And if you just joined us or you've been listening, again, if you go to the website or send us an email, we can give you this entire deck. You could go to Dr. Bill at Fire Your Excuses. You could send us a message that way. You could go leave a little message on the fan page, Fire Excuses fan page on Facebook, and we'll send you this particular deck so you have it all. But let me talk about the 5 things I'd like you to consider mastering that will put you on the board as far as a person that companies want to keep, or companies want to hire, or people want to do business with. First of all, the art of follow-up. We're in a culture where people promise and then they never follow through. I was in a talk that I did for Fire Excuses last year. A guy came up to me and said, you know what, Bill, I love what you're doing. I want to bring you in. I know you said if you don't act in the first 72 hours, you're never going to act. You will hear from me because I'm firing my excuses. Well, I got to tell you, I still hear the crickets. Never heard from him. Kind of humorous. But even when we have the best intentions, we don't follow up. Are you a person that does it? And if you do, say, I'm following up like I promised, and people really appreciate that. What about the art of recognition? The art of saying, I just want to highlight this person's work. I just want to thank them for what they did. I just want to review. I ask people if you would be so kind to put a little comment if you enjoyed this free seminar. That really helps us. You could do that on Facebook. You could write us. But those are things that can put you on the map. I guarantee you that everybody who speaks and writes and tries to build something appreciates those people that take a moment to write a review of a book, make a comment on a website, send them a resource. Those are ways to recognize them. So along those lines, we could even focus on resources alone. And what does that mean? Well, if you see an article that's great and you think of somebody that you know would appreciate that, go ahead and send it along. And you know what we find is that there is a balance to this, isn't there? If you offer free help and you offer free services, eventually a person will enjoy helping you. If somebody's famous even then, and they're hard to get a hold of, and every so often you send them an incredible link to a great podcast or book or article or respond, I guarantee you eventually when you would like to connect with them, there's a good chance they might just say, that person's been great. They've built our community. They've been active on our website. I would be happy to help them. So there's an art and a principle of reciprocity that happens by just being a resource. You don't even have to come up with the ideas yourself. You just have to find them and pass them along. What about introducing people? The art of introductions. What do you know 2 people that really need to know each other? Could you get 2 people together and say, Jim, meet Mark, Mark, meet Jim? You could even use something like a high-tech system. There's an app called SoundCloud where you can download it on your phone, record a little audio introduction. You could link both of their emails to that little audio message and say, I'm on the road here. I just want to make sure Mark knew Jim and Jim knew Mark. You guys both have your email addresses here in the body of this email. Hope you're doing well. I know you'll enjoy meeting each other. Would that have an impact more than just a LinkedIn, meet Jim or an email? Absolutely it would. So think about being different, and it wouldn't take much time to do a video recording. So think about that. So then also think about the idea of being a great thanker. And I just want to let you know, I've been getting a little bit of feedback that the chat in our platform is not working correctly. And I know we have a few bugs today that we're trying to work out. So if you would like to chat, you can do it right here on the Google Hangouts function. If that doesn't work, just send me an email after the broadcast. I'll be happy to follow up with you and do that. But thanks for your patience. We're going to work out the details as we go along. But this is our inaugural and first broadcast. So what about the art of a thank you? I would like to encourage you to create your own thank you cards. And you can go anywhere. You can go to vistaprint.com and you can create your own thank you cards that way. You can pull a picture off the internet. There's 1,000 ways to do that. But personalize it, thank people, be memorable, but do not sell with your thank you card. There's nothing more cheesy than somebody saying thank you and then saying, if you need my services, here you go. If you're going to thank somebody, thank them, and it's all about them. It's not a subtle sales job. People can smell that a mile away. Just thank people and do that. Also be aware of being perceived as a person who bribes. If you thank people to a large degree, many companies are not even allowed to accept your gift. If you want to do something a little bit more substantial, thank the whole department, not just the person who brought you in, not just the client. It can get a little smarmy feeling, but be a person who thanks people and who's a resource, a person who recognizes the achievement of others, who introduces people, and you will stand out. Well, let me give you a few principles, and then we're going to wrap up our call in a little bit here. The first principle I want to give you is this idea of walking the last mile of denial. What does that mean? Well, we find, Marcus and I, that this has been a really important principle, and we often get 90% along the way to solving something, and then we stop short. Maybe we try to eat healthy, we try to exercise, but what is the last mile of denial? Well, if you remember, if you've been here a little bit, you know that I said most things only take 2 or 3 things. But if you do 2 things and you need to do 3, you have trouble with this. So what is that last mile of denial? Well, if you eat right and you're trying to be healthy and you just don't know how many calories you need and how many calories you're eating, that lack of knowledge is your last mile of denial. You might say, I don't know what's going on. I'm working out, I'm eating healthy, but you might be eating just too much. And that is your last mile of denial. You could be somebody who tries to save money but doesn't keep a budget and just ends up spending a little bit too much for lunches or dinners or coffees, just a little something. But that is enough to keep you from being able to increase your savings. All of us have the last mile of denial. The question is, what is your last mile of denial for your career? We've talked a lot about that today. What is your last mile of denial for not being able to do what you want to do for time? There's lots of factors there. If you don't know, by the way, what is your last mile, you need to get some people in your life that will help you to see the blind spots. We can help you, but I can also encourage you to start a mastermind group. And that's something that we're looking at starting another one. And if you have interest, let me know. But you need to get some people, formal or informally, in your life that will call you out, hold your feet to the fire and say, that's just not true. That I see what you're saying, but there's some areas you're missing. The next principle that I want to begin to get you thinking about is the idea of don't try harder, get more connected. One of the number one ways we can make change permanent is the idea of trying together. If you tried to lose the last 10 or 15 pounds for the last 10 years, if I'm going to Vegas, I have to tell you, I'm going to vote against you. I'm going to bet against you because the best predictor, again, of past behavior, of future behavior is your past behavior. If you were going to be able to do it by willpower, you would have done it already. So maybe this is a miraculous thing where all of a sudden you just create this sense of willpower, but usually that's not how it works. And why try that hard? I get more out of life and business by being connected to others than by anything I've ever done alone. For example, we have book sales, and that's great. And every day we see books being bought, and it's a wonderful thing. But you know what? We have hundreds of books being sold, being purchased by organizations in one day. Which is better, me trying to just get the world to know, about our book or spending some good time partnering with organizations that can buy in bulk. And I got to tell you that works out really well. So again, don't try harder, get more connected. Partner up with people that are doing what you're doing. One person said, reach out to you ready for this? The 200 people that are doing what you're doing and have blogs and websites. Just get to know them. What about LinkedIn? They say that you should have 10 times as many connections as your age. If you're 50, you better have 500. What are they saying? Other people would say, no, you just need 50 that are really core. Well, you get the idea. It's not a matter of numbers, but it does kind of say if you're 50 and you haven't met 10 people a year for the last 50 years that you could connect with, something's wrong. Begin to look at, how do I build quality connections? LinkedIn may or may not be your thing, but you need to have a high NQ. And what's that? A network quotient, ability to connect with others. So I finally want to wrap up with the idea of experiencing the joy of serving. At the end of the day, it's not about just building your career. It's really about leveraging your impact and feeling like you're making a difference. And some of you I know are listening just for that reason. It's not about the finances. Maybe you're not working in a traditional job at this point. Maybe you're retired. Maybe you're in between. But I want you to think about the things that won't happen in the world if you do not get connected, if you do not join up, if you do not get your blind spots looked at. And think about the amount of time that you know and feel like you have left, and say, what would that be like if that just didn't happen anytime soon? Well, you get to a point in life where you say life is just too short to not get the help you need. I am an expert in one area, but I'm not an expert in my car. I'm not an expert in plenty of areas, and I'm not afraid to bring people in to help me to get their input in my life. It just helps. And so everybody's an expert in something, and everybody could be of service to others. Maybe you might want to consider bartering to people and say, you know what, I'll cook a great meal if you'll help my computer. I'll help you with this if you'll help me work on a website. Experience the joy of connecting. What about serving? Well, we can have a tremendous impact this year if we begin with the things that we want to do to help others where no one notices, we're not paid. We may even feel like we can't even do much. We might certainly feel like this is a wrong that needs to be righted. I can do something. And when you get ticked off like that, you're probably getting close to your calling for at least that year. I have a friend, Dave Cohn, who says, whoever has the vision has the job. If you have the vision, if you're the only one that sees it, you get the job. So how are you going to fire your excuses in the other parts of your life so you can serve? And by the way, don't wait till you have it all together. Begin serving now. Let me end with a couple things. Let me start with a quote from appropriately this month from Martin Luther King, because it's his birthday. He said this: everyone can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. Do you want to be great? Do you want to be great in every way that matters? Well, you want to be a servant. So just a couple housekeeping things. First of all, if you've not taken the Fire Excuse Self-Assessment, it's at the website fireyourexcuses.com. It's a great way to go. I can tell you we've had about 1,100 people take it. We're going to be recalculating it for industry, but thousands of people now have taken it, and it's been a lot of fun just to see the patterns. See how you compare. You get a lot for free. You get a 20-page personalized printout for you there, so consider that. Special offer that I mentioned, I'll mention again here. I'm going to actually shut it down in about an hour or so, but if you would like a coaching session for 50 minutes to 60 minutes for $97, you can go to the website, fireyourexcuses.com. I'm just going to keep it up for about an hour before I end, then I'm going to disconnect the link. But if you want to go there for $97 instead of $150, I'll sit down with you either in my office in Costa Mesa as a Skype call or a phone call, whatever your preference is. But you need to pay within an hour or so. And that I'll just say by 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, you can sign up there. It's normally $150. We did this earlier in the year for Toshiba. We had several people that wanted to take advantage of that. But maybe you just want to sit down. You can use that for anything. Hey, I want to write a book, or I'm thinking about something here for writing, or I'm doing something for work, or I feel like I'm not sure what my next steps are. Maybe we can help. And I guarantee you, you'll enjoy that. If it's not of value to you, I'll give you your money back. I've really found anybody that we couldn't give some good insight in an hour, having done this for years. So it's been great to be with you. I just want to thank you. It's a new year. We're almost through the first month, and I want to say now go and reinvent yourself. The question I want to leave you with is this: why would you expect that 2015 would be any different than last year? We know about inertia, that the object at rest stays at rest unless something on the outside impacts it. So if nothing's impacting your life, there is no reason to believe that this year will be any better than last year, and it might even be worse. If you want that to be different, you're going to have to impact it from the outside. So remember the adage: walk the last mile of denial, and don't let what you can't do keep you from doing what you can. And then finally, don't try harder this year. Don't waste another moment trying to double down on your willpower. Get more connected. It'll be easier and you'll have better results. Well, thanks everybody. Remember, fireyourexcuses.com. You can go there. You can click or paste in the link if you want to do a coaching session. Would love to hear some feedback on the Facebook fan page. That'd be wonderful. We'll have another broadcast soon. Thank you for your patience as we work through the bugs of learning how to do this. And I'd love to hear what you thought. Have a great day. We're not going to take any questions today. You can ask me questions again at these locations, but this will be available for rebroadcast. If you'd like a copy of the slide deck, just send an email to drbill@fireyourexcuses.com, and I'll send you the entire deck for you to have to look over at your leisure. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.